Welcome to Nucleus, the podcast covering America's top leaders in business and culture. I'm your host, Tripwire. Today on the show, the visionary director who joined forces with entertainment moguls to launch one of Hollywood's most ambitious studios. Last month, Spielberg turned 78. Not exactly breaking news. Except, here's what makes it weird. The guy who literally invented the summer blockbuster, who taught Hollywood how to print money with movies about sharks and dinosaurs, who co-founded an entire studio to compete with Disney. He's still showing up to work, still directing, still producing, still relevant in an industry that chews up legends and spits them out faster than you can say streaming rights. And that raises a fascinating question. How does someone stay at the top of the most cutthroat creative industry on Earth for 6 decades? The answer isn't what you think. It's not about talent. Hollywood's full of talented people working at Starbucks. It's about something Spielberg figured out that most creative geniuses never do: how to turn artistic vision into sustainable business without destroying either one. That's the trick. And his journey from rejected film school applicant to billionaire studio founder is basically a masterclass in strategic career building disguised as movie magic. Steven Spielberg got his first camera at 12 and immediately started making films, instead of, having a normal childhood. Rejected twice by USC Film School, which has got a sting when you later become the most successful director in history. He ended up at Cal State Long Beach studying English. But here's where it gets interesting. At 17, he made a short film called Amblin that caught the attention of a Universal Studios executive named Sidney Sheinberg. And Sheinberg did something absolutely bananas. Offered this kid a 7-year directing contract. Spielberg became the youngest director ever signed to a long-term studio deal, and he dropped out of college immediately. That's the first lesson right there. When opportunity kicks down your door, you don't ask it to wait while you finish your homework. He spent years directing television, learning the craft, figuring out how to tell stories efficiently. Then came Jaws in 1975. He was 27 years old. The mechanical sharks didn't work. The production went from 55 days to 159 days. The budget nearly tripled, and everyone thought his career was over before it started. Instead, the film grossed over $100 million and created the concept of the summer blockbuster. That's not luck. That's someone who prepared so thoroughly that when everything went wrong, he could improvise his way to success. The film changed Hollywood's entire business model. Wide releases, heavy marketing, event movies. Spielberg accidentally invented modern film distribution while trying not to drown. Then he just kept winning. Close Encounters, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T. became the highest-grossing film ever at that point. By the early 90s, Spielberg had a problem most people would kill for. He'd conquered commercial filmmaking so completely that it was boring. So he made Schindler's List, a 3-hour black-and-white film about the difficult realities of the Holocaust that everyone said would be career suicide. It won Best Picture and Best Director. He proved he could do both, make Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year. Popcorn movies and prestige pictures. That range is almost unheard of.
My name is Tom Sachs. I'm an artist in New York City. For nearly 2 decades, I have been collaborating with Nike.
Nike running is for runners. Nike basketball is for basketball. Nike craft is for everyone else.
But here's where the story gets really interesting from a business perspective. In 1994, Spielberg did something audacious. He co-founded DreamWorks with Jeffrey Katzenberg, who just left Disney in a spectacular falling out, and David Geffen, a music industry billionaire. 3 massive egos, 3 different skill sets, $2.7 billion in funding. The pitch was revolutionary. Build the first new major Hollywood studio in decades. Artist-friendly, creator-owned, competing directly with the giants. The vision was intoxicating. Film, animation, television, music, interactive entertainment. Basically, they wanted to build Disney from scratch, except better. The reality was messier. They planned this massive production campus in Playa Vista that collapsed due to environmental issues and cost overruns. The live-action film division struggled to find consistent hits beyond Spielberg's own movies. Building an animation studio from zero required insane capital before generating any returns. The music division did fine, but operated independently. The gaming investments mostly failed. And here's the structural problem. Running a full studio requires distribution networks, theater relationships, massive overhead. All the infrastructure the established players already had. DreamWorks was trying to compete without those advantages. But something worked. DreamWorks Animation. Shrek in 2001 became a massive hit and launched a franchise. The animation division went public in 2004, which provided capital and validation. Suddenly, they had something that could actually compete with Disney and Pixar. Meanwhile, Spielberg kept directing prestigious, profitable films. Saving Private Ryan, Minority Report, Munich. His personal brand became the studio's anchor. Eventually, they had to make hard choices. In 2006, they sold the live-action business to Paramount for $1.6 billion. Some saw it as surrender. Others saw it as smart recognition that the studio model had structural disadvantages they couldn't overcome. The animation division kept growing, eventually sold to Comcast for $3.8 billion in 2016. And Spielberg? He formed Amblin Partners, a leaner production company backed by international investors. No more trying to be everything. Just focused production with distribution partners handling the risk. So what's the blueprint here? 3 massive lessons that apply way beyond Hollywood. First lesson, master execution before building the empire. Spielberg spent 20 years becoming the world's best blockbuster director before launching DreamWorks. He had credibility, resources, and hard-won knowledge of how the industry actually worked. Too many people try to build businesses before they've developed deep domain expertise. They want to be the CEO before they've been the craftsperson. That's backwards. Your reputation as a practitioner attracts the capital, talent, and opportunities that make the entrepreneurial leap viable. Spielberg could raise billions because everyone knew he could deliver. He'd proven it repeatedly under impossible conditions. That track record was the foundation everything else was built on. If you want to start something, first become undeniably excellent at the core skill. Excellence creates options. Second lesson, partnership governance matters more than partnership chemistry. The DreamWorks 3-partner model had real advantages: complementary skills, shared risk, diverse networks. But the partnership of equal structure created decision-making problems. No single CEO meant consensus was required for major moves. That sounds democratic and appealing, but it slows decisions and creates compromises that satisfy partners but aren't optimal for the business. When you form partnerships, explicitly define who has authority over what. Who gets final say on creative decisions versus financial decisions versus strategic direction. We'll figure it out doesn't work when millions are on the line and partners disagree. Someone needs clear authority for different domains. Equal ownership doesn't require equal decision rights on everything. Third lesson, strategic focus beats ambitious breadth. DreamWorks' original vision, film, television, music, interactive, animation, all at once, was too diffuse. The capital requirements, management attention, and operational complexity of doing everything simultaneously prevented excellence in any single area. The parts that succeeded emerged when they focused. Animation under Katzenberg's dedicated leadership. Spielberg's own films when he could concentrate on them. Especially with limited resources, focus on becoming excellent at one or two things before expanding. The discipline to say no to adjacent opportunities preserves energy for core competencies. DreamWorks eventually learned this, but the learning was expensive. The broader framework here is about core competency. Companies succeed when they identify what they do better than anyone else and build around that. DreamWorks tried to do too many things at once. When they refocused on animation and selective prestige films, their actual competitive advantages, they created real value. It's a lesson about knowing the difference between vision and overreach. So what can you take from Spielberg's journey? 3 things. First, build your reputation as a craftsperson before trying to build an empire. Credibility comes from demonstrated excellence, not just ideas. Second, if you're forming partnerships, define decision rights explicitly upfront, because partnership of equals sounds nice, but creates structural problems when you disagree. Third, focus on becoming the absolute best at one or two things before expanding into adjacent areas. Breadth without depth just spreads resources thin. The bottom line? Spielberg's still working at 78 because he figured out something most creative people never do. Artistic vision and business sophistication aren't opposites. They're complementary skills, and mastering both creates a career that outlasts trends, technology changes, and industry disruption. That's not magic. That's strategy. Thank you for listening to Nucleus. You can show our podcast team some love with 5 stars and a follow. Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Grep News. Thomas.